Today, we're going to talk about how to create email sequences that get big results, results like $60,000 in revenue or $300,000 in revenue in less than a month from 7 emails. And those are significant results in the businesses. That's not like an enterprise Fortune 500 business doing this. Small business, 60 to 300K, 7 emails. That's what we're talking about today. So one of my favorite stories from my business, Profit Automation, was from 2023. Now, in 2023, if you're not familiar with the technology and software as a service industry, 2023 was kind of a bloodbath for salespeople. It's actually the reason I started my business, because I got fired from my sales job. And in 2023, if you were a salesperson in tech, you had either been fired, laid off, or you were afraid you were about to be. And in that environment, I worked with companies that were selling to salespeople, and they sold sales trainings, communities, things like that to these salespeople. And you can imagine that's a pretty tough market. So what we did, and they were struggling, they weren't closing. They had, leads in their email lists and things like that, but they weren't getting them into sales calls and they weren't closing them into their programs. So what we did is we created an email sequence of 7 emails. I did this for both businesses. And those 7 emails generated 40 meetings for one business, sales meetings to go sell their product to somebody who was interested, and 50 sales meetings for the other business. One business did 60K from those meetings in less than 3 weeks from when we started the emails. And the other one did 300K in the month from those emails. And so the question is, how do you create emails that are that impactful? How do you create emails that actually lead to sales meetings, lead to revenue? Most SaaS companies right now, when you look at their emails that they're sending, their product brochures, their, emails that just toot the company's horn and say how cool they are and how cool their product is. And even if they're talking about how cool of the results that their product is, it's not good enough. It's not good. It's still just a product, and then the company talking about itself and its product. To create the kind of results that I'm talking about here with these 2 email sequences that I told this story about, you have to do things differently. And it's not put more emojis in your emails. It's not change your branding to purple colors. It's not put more links in the email or more exclamation points. It's not send it at just the right time of day. It's none of those things. This is how you create emails that actually make an impact on the business, on the sales pipeline, and on your revenue numbers. Okay, the first key is to understand your prospect. Is that boring? Are you bored by that answer? I know it's kind of boring, but that's similar to the counsel that we hear all the time about stop pitching your product. Talk about the customer, not about your product. You could scratch that into the phone and onto the computer screen of every marketer in the world, and still a very small percentage would do it. Most marketing is about the product, and most marketing doesn't understand the customer very well. They don't, and even if they've done the work to have like an ICP, an ideal customer profile, it's written down somewhere, they don't use it, they don't look at it, they don't update it, they don't expand it. It's just, most marketers aren't using that. So you need to understand your customer really deeply. First of all, you need to understand their pain and their problem. Okay, you need to understand how that shows up mentally, emotionally, and physically in their lives. You need to kind of understand their personality and how that's going to impact them. That pain and problem are going to impact them and their personality. To understand their personality, you can look at Tony Robbins's 6 human needs. He has this structure for practical psychology, and all of us have these 6 human needs, but we prioritize them in different orders. And the order that we prioritize them in determine a lot of the decisions we make in our lives, in particular, the top 2 and the order of those top 2. So for example, a salesperson or a sales leader, they're about, I would say 85% of the time, their top 2 human needs are significance and certainty. Okay, significance is they're in this to be important. They want to be recognized. They want numbers up on the board. They want to be able to point to a number and show how relevant they are, how successful they are. That's all significance driven. The fact that they're out there doing a hard thing, fighting the hard fight, doing the hard work, doing the thing that's risky, doing the thing that a lot of other people say they could never do, or they couldn't have that job because there's too much pressure or those kind of things. All of that makes that job more attractive to a significance-driven individual. The second thing is certainty. And certainty is the need to know what's going to happen, the need to know ahead of time that you're going to be stable, comfortable. At its very root, the need for certainty is the need to know that you won't be in pain. Certainty for a salesperson is, yeah, I want to be out here fighting with these high stakes. I want it to be an uncertain environment because that's more exciting. But at the end of the day, I want you to give me a way to win every time. Okay. It's like the super fan in sports, like some Alabama football fan who they love the games. They love football because it's exciting, because you don't know who's going to win. But at the end of the day, they want to win every single time, and they're upset when they don't. That's the psychology of a salesperson. Now, whoever your prospect is, they're going to have these 6 human needs or differently. And I don't want to go through all of them in this podcast, but you can find them anywhere. Just go look for Tony Robbins 6 human needs on Google, ask ChatGPT what they are, and you will get great answers. And then finally, meet them where they're at. So you understand their problem, you understand who they are, you need to go to them. They're not coming to you in this email. These emails aren't about your product, telling them, hey, come over here and learn about this thing. You go to them. And if you meet them where they're at, in their pain, in their problem, with an understanding of their human needs, and you demonstrate that you know who they are and you know what they're struggling with, they're going to think that you have the solution, and you're going to acquire the most precious commodity in marketing today, and that is attention. Okay, the second thing that you need to do is anticipate and resolve objections. Now, every prospect that you ever work with, who you want to come from, just being a prospect to coming through the customer journey and buying your product, they will have an objection that will prevent them from moving forward. It doesn't matter if you have a simple or a complex sales process or customer journey. It doesn't matter if it's long or short. Everybody's going to have an objection. And if you don't understand how to identify or anticipate those objections and resolve them, then you're not going to be successful, because everybody's going to stop at some point. In a sales process where your salesperson is talking to them one-to-one, they can just ask them. That's their job as a salesperson, to uncover what those objections are and work through them with the prospect. When you're doing one-to-many selling, when you're trying to get somebody to take an action and you're not having a one-to-one conversation, you've got to anticipate those objections. I say objections because that's the more accessible word. But if we go a level deeper, what these actually are limiting beliefs. They are beliefs that the prospect has about why they shouldn't do this thing, why it won't work for them, why they're different, or why it's a bad idea, or why it's going to lower their status among their peers or their family or their coworkers or whatever. So those limiting beliefs are what you need to understand, and then you need to help them move past those limiting beliefs. And if you don't anticipate them, then you're going to miss them. And some portion of the people who you're trying to move through your buyer's journey are going to stop because of a limiting belief. Okay. You need to kind of anticipate, and you learn as you go. If you're working with a certain market, you learn what their limiting beliefs are. And the reality is, I'll talk about it in a minute, they're not that complicated. It's not as complex, or the number of possible limiting beliefs aren't as infinite as you might think. But anticipate what they are, and then you tell stories. The way that you resolve these limiting beliefs and help people move past them is you tell a story of somebody who had that limiting belief and they were stuck, and then they learned that limiting belief wasn't true. They overcame that limiting belief. They took action. They got what they wanted. You tell that story, and that moves your prospect past that limiting belief if you do a good job of it. Okay, the third thing that you need to do to write this kind of impactful email sequence is to understand practical psychology. And we've touched on this a little bit in the last key, but I want to go deeper into this here. There are persuasive levers of persuasion that you can pull as you're writing these emails, and they're all based on the emotions and the psychology of your prospect. And what we've talked about here are understanding the person and their pain and their problem, and then anticipating objections, and then telling stories that help them overcome. Those are your levers of persuasion in this email sequence. And this is how you use an understanding of psychology to move them through. Now, the more you understand humans with certain needs, the more easily you can do this. You'll get better and better at this as time goes on, because the reality is there aren't that many different kind of humans. There's the significance and certainty driven human. There's the uncertainty and love driven human. There are, there are categories, but there's not this infinite of variety in these core things that you need to understand in order to influence and persuade. And so let's go back to a sales leader. If a sales leader's limiting belief is that there are no good prospects in the market I've been assigned to, me and my team are just trying, there are no prospects out here. That's a limiting belief that he has that is going to prevent him from being successful. Now, if he's having trouble finding that significant other that he wants to spend his life with, guess what his limiting belief is? It's the same thing. It's because it's a limiting belief in him. It's not circumstance based. And so as marketers, often we go into this and we think, what's their problem? How do we solve it? And we get into this complex thing, build a software, like all these, and you attack the wrong thing. His problem is this limiting belief that there's no good prospects out there. It's not true, but it's what's stopping him. So you need to understand the difference between a real problem and a limiting belief. And as a marketer, you can work with both of these things, but you got to know the difference. A limiting belief, you resolve it. You help them understand that it's not true, and you help them move past it and change their beliefs. A problem, you show understanding. You teach them how to solve it, because that's probably what your company does, and you probably know how to solve it. So you teach them how, and you invite them to come on a journey with you. Okay? That journey is all about solving the problem. The limiting beliefs are obstacles in that journey that you're going to have to get them past if you're going to keep moving forward. Okay? So these are some of the keys to writing that kind of impactful email sequence. I hope this has been helpful to you. And if it has, leave a comment, let me know. If you have questions, leave a comment, let me know. Or if you have anything you'd like to say, love to hear your comments. Make sure you rate this podcast highly on your podcast app of choice so other people can find it. And we'll see you next time here on the Growth and Influence Podcast.